Good morning. Happy Thursday, pre-callers. I'm going to do some more notes. We're doing using identities to simplify expressions. Hopefully you have your list of identities that we learned on Tuesday in front of you. Pull those notes up, keep them on another screen, dual screen, whatever it is. But we're going to simplify these expressions. Okay, now these are expressions, they're not equations, so you're not moving things from side to side. There's no equal sign here. You're just simplifying using the rules of math. Canceling when it's multiplication, adding if you get a common denominator, and using your identities. So the first thing I notice is right away, you want to write them if you can in terms of sine and cosine. That's a good little trick. So cosecant is 1 over sine, and that's being multiplied times sine, and then we're subtracting cosine squared. Well, this is understood to be over 1. This sign is on top, this is on the bottom, and they're being multiplied, so it cancels. So we get 1 minus cosine squared x. Now, I'll come over here and write the I'll go over here. The big daddy of Pythagoreans was sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. That's a identity. Those two things are always equal. So if I were to subtract the cosine squared from both sides, because that is an equation, okay, notice the equal sign in that, I would get sine squared x equals 1 minus cosine squared x. That means those two things are equal. This is the same as that, and you can swap them out, as Bushro used the word, or you substitute them out. So 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared x, okay? So it's simplified. We took this complicated subtraction and we made it simpler. All right, here we go again. As I said, a trick of the trade is to write things in terms of sine and cosine. So cosine squared is already in terms of sine and cosine. So I'm going to write cosine squared x. And then tangent here can be written as cosine x over sine x. Now I'm still in the numerator. So I'm going to put that over 1, and then all of that is over my sine x. It's called a complex fraction when you have fractions within fractions. But, this is sine over cosine, silly me. Sine x over cosine x. I wrote that as cotangent. Okay, so now the numerator can be simplified because this is being multiplied. There's your multiplication. That's understood. So this cosine and one of these, because that's 2 of them being multiplied, cancels. So then we get cosine x times sine x over sine x. And now these cancel because 1's on top. Everything's being multiplied. So you can only cancel when things are being multiplied, and voila, it simplifies to cosine x. Okay, so let's move on to number 3. In number 3, we have an addition. So we're going to put them together somehow, try to simplify it. Well, sine x, not a whole lot goes on with that. So sine x plus cosine x, but here's the cotangent that I accidentally did a minute ago. That's cosine x over sine x. Now these are being multiplied, so that just is understood to be over 1. So you get sine x plus cosine squared, because cosine times cosine is cosine squared, over sine x. And this is understood to be over 1. Now this is plus, this is different. In order to add, I have to have a common denominator, which clearly between 1 and sine, it would be sine. So I'm going to multiply this by sine x over sine x, which is my clever form of 1. And on top, I'll get sine squared x, and that's still over sine x, plus cosine squared x over sine x. Well, now I have my common denominator, so that's sine squared x plus cosine squared x over sine x. Well, you might recognize that top part as a Pythagorean. Sine x plus cosine squared x equals 1, so that can be switched out. So this numerator is really just equal to 1. And then over sine x, which is cosecant x. Okay? All right. So, next one. This is by far the hardest. Woo! Woo, this is the challenge. Okay, y'all are doing all these challenges. We're doing physical challenges. You're playing games. Okay, this is like a mental puzzle, like a challenge. And see if you can do it maybe a different way than me. I'm going to just do what I see to do first, and then we'll kind of go from there. I think I'm going to split it up. Since I have a minus sign on top, I'm going to write each part of the numerator over the denominator. So that would be cotangent x over cosine squared x minus sine x cosine x over cosine squared x. Okay, now I'm going to think what can happen. Well, here on this side, I see that this cosine and this one can cancel. But here I need to rework that cotangent, see what's going on there. Cotangent is cosine x over sine x. And when you divide, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. And I'm just going to rewrite this part too. Okay, so look, if this is cosine on top and it's being multiplied by 1 over cosine squared, that cosine and with that squared will cancel. So we'll end up with 1, what do we have here? 1 over sine x cosine x minus sine x over cosine x. Well, if I'm trying to simplify, I'm going to have to put them back together. So I'm going to get a common denominator, which would be sine times cosine. So this guy's just missing a sine x. So I'm going to multiply by a clever form of 1, because that's not changing the value, just the looks. And on top, over here, I'll still have 1 over sine x cosine x minus, and this will be sine squared when you multiply sine times sine, over, and then this will be sine x cosine x. Order doesn't matter when you're multiplying. I see the common denominator, so I get 1 minus sine squared x in my numerator over my common denominator. And then we know from up above, we use this one, if sine squared plus cosine squared is 1, we can subtract the cosines. We also could subtract the sines, and we would get cosine squared x equals 1 minus sine squared. So I think that's what we have on this problem. Yeah. So this is going to be cosine squared x over sine x cosine x, and cancel, cancel. So that's cosine over sine, and then that is written as cotangent. Okay. All right. Last one is going to be way easy. That one was our challenge one for the day. This one's super easy. This is something you should easily be able to do. Cotangent is cosine x over sine x. This is understood to be multiplication, and that's going to be 1 over cosine x. Cancel, cancel. We get 1 over sine x, which is cosecant x. Boom. Okay? All right. Let me know if you have any